Hi everyone, welcome back to my page. I'm so glad you're here. For this masterclass, we're going to be talking about something that most families never name out loud, and that's the ways in which caretaking can tip into infantilization and enmeshment, and how that shapes the sexual and relationship knowledge autistic adults grow up with or don't. And I would just like to give a huge thank you and shout out to my friend Tina for planting the seed for this whole masterclass. I wouldn't have built this without her ideas, and so amazing, amazing girl. Before we dive in, I just want to say a quick heads up. This masterclass discusses enmeshment, parentification, and the concept sometimes called emotional incest, along with sexual knowledge, consent, and sexual victimization statistics. None of it is graphic, but if any of it feels a lot for you right now, please take care of yourself first and come back to this when you're ready. This is for autistic adults thinking about their own upbringing, for parents and caregivers, and for clinicians and educators who support this population. We'll define terms carefully and root everything in the research. So let's get into it. I'd like to start with why this conversation matters. First, needing support with one thing never implies incompetence at anything else. Second, this isn't just a feeling. Infantilization of autistic people is documented in research on media representation and public perception. Third, when a family's protective instincts tip into control, the downstream effect shows up later as gaps in sexual knowledge and self advocacy. And last, this is about naming patterns, not assigning blame. Most of this comes from a place of fear and love, not malice. And that should be understood. So, what does infantilization actually mean? It's treating an autistic person through language, media, policy, or daily family interactions as perpetually childlike, no matter their actual age. Stevenson and colleagues from 2011 study found that autism representation across parent organizations, charities, and news media defaulted overwhelmingly to depicting children. A follow up study a decade later found some improvement in raw representation numbers, but the same underlining infantilization tone persisted. And Low Bosco's 2023 work connects this directly to how autistic adult sexuality and aging get dismissed or pathologized. Here are six everyday patterns worth watching for: baby voice or oversimplified speech, regardless of actual comprehension; decisions made for your own good without consultation; privacy treated as optional, like reading texts or walking into rooms unannounced; stimming or self care routines that were fine in childhood suddenly become policed in adulthood; sexuality being gatekept or denied outright; and praise for innocence or purity that frames a knowledge gap as a virtue instead of something to address. Here's a small table that shows the differences between support versus infantilization. Support responds to the person and steps back. Infantilization decides for them and stays involved. Across communication, decision making, privacy, independence, and sexuality, ask yourself which column best describes what's actually happening in a given relationship. Now, I would like to shift the conversation into where this can start at home. Some clinicians use the term emotional incest, sometimes called covert incest, first named by Kenneth Adams in 1991. It describes a parent leaning on a child for the emotional support, validation, or companionship that would normally come from an adult partner. To be clear, this isn't about physical abuse. It's about roles and boundaries getting blurred. From here forward, we'll use the clinical term researchers actually use enmeshment and parentification, as described in Family Systems Research by Lisa Hooper. This map shows four areas where enmeshment tends to show up: emotional caretaking, secrecy, decision making, and boundaries. In each area, notice how the healthy version and the enmeshed version can look similar on the surface. The real difference is whose needs are actually being served. I don't know why this has to be controversial, but this is a hill I'm worth dying on. Autism does not equal incompetence. Needing a visual schedule for chores says nothing about your ability to consent to sex or manage your finances. Struggling to articulate a feeling isn't the same as not having one. Vulnerable does not mean helpless. And yes, the research shows an elevated risk, but the fix is better information, not less autonomy. And consequences, including the uncomfortable ones, are part of how every adult builds judgment. On this slide, you could see four scripts to adapt to your own voice for autistic adults asserting boundaries with parents, and language parents or clinicians can borrow too. Please read through each and notice the main theme: naming the care behind a behavior while still holding a clear boundary. And to just really drive the point home, all of this, infantilization and enmeshment alike, funnels into the same downstream problem: a gap in real, accurate sexual and relationship knowledge. So, on this page, I just wanted to provide a little bit of research on the subject. Brown-Lavoie and colleagues found autistic adults report significantly lower sexual knowledge and a threefold higher rate of unwanted sexual contact. Solomon and colleagues found autistic adults draw sexual information disproportionately from non social sources, trial and error, media, rather than parents or peers, in part because parents themselves delay these conversations out of fear that talking about sex will increase interest in it. The research does not support that fear, and critically, desire for relationships is equivalent across autistic and non autistic adults. This is a knowledge gap, not a desire gap. I also just wanted to recognize a few pitfalls to watch for yourself and for if you're a parent, a caregiver, a clinician. Don't confuse desexualizing someone with protecting them. It removes tools and not the risks. Don't mistake compliance for health, which could be an easy non pushback child, maybe a parentified one. Don't let support quietly calcify into control. And lastly, don't let your own anxiety set someone else's limits. So, what can help? Direct, comprehensive, literal sex and relationship education, letting decisions genuinely sit with the adults they belong to, building privacy in as a default rather than a special accommodation. And if you're a parent, watching your own role. If you're leaning on your adult child for support, an adult peer should be providing that's worth naming and rebalancing. And lastly, I just want to end on the point that you are allowed to be an adult fully with messy decisions, real privacy, real information, and everything that comes with being an adult and that lived experience. And so, thank you so much for spending this time in this conversation with me, for listening to the different research I was able to provide. And if anyone has any questions or comments, please comment them. I would love to read them. And if anyone wants the PDF version of this, please just DM me. I will gladly be able to send it. And again, thank you so much for being here. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you again soon. Bye.